Hello and welcome to the tiny book of the Little Mermaid. Make sure to like and subscribe. Little Mermaid. Deep under the sea, in the kingdom of Atlantica, the mermaids gathered for a special concert. It was Princess Ariel's first performance. King Triton watched in delight as his older daughter began the concert. But when the time came to present Ariel, she wasn't there. Ariel had completely forgotten about the concert. She was miles away with her friend Flounder, searching for a sunken ship. King Triton had forbidden contact with the human world, but Ariel loved the idea of it. She found everything about humans fascinating and longed to be part of their world. At last, Ariel spied the ship. She urged a scared Flounder forward, and the two headed for the ship. Inside, Ariel spotted an unfamiliar silver object. She had never seen anything so wonderful in her entire life. Ariel had just picked up another human object when she heard a loud crash. It was a shark. The shark chased Ariel and Flounder around the ship, snapping its menacing jaws at them. Ariel and Flounder swam through an old anchor. The shark followed them, but it was too big to fit. It got stuck, and Ariel and Flounder were able to escape. Ariel raced to the surface, eager to show her newest treasures to her friend Scuttle. The seagull lived on land and knew everything about humans. Scuttle studied the human object. Then, running it through his feathers, Scuttle told Ariel it was a dinglehopper, and that humans used it to brush their hair. Scuttle was showing Ariel how to make music with the Smurf blast she had found when she suddenly remembered the concert. She raced home with her new treasures. In the murky waters outside Atlantica, the evil sea witch Ursula watched Ariel in her crystal ball. Ursula longed to overthrow King Triton and rule the seas herself. Ursula cackled. Perhaps this little mermaid, with her love of the human world, would be the king to King Triton's undoing. Back in Atlantica, King Triton was furious with Ariel. He believed humans were dangerous and wished to protect his daughter. King Triton forbade Ariel to go to the surface again. He ordered Sebastian, the court composer, to keep an eye on Ariel and make sure she obeyed. But Ariel was not easy to watch. By the time Sebastian turned around, she was already swimming away. Sighting the little crab, swam after her. Sebastian followed Ariel and Flounder to a secret grotto. When Sebastian saw what was inside, he was astonished. It was filled with human treasures. Sebastian listened in shock as Ariel told Flounder that she wished to be part of the human world. Just then, a shadow blocked the light coming into the cavern. Ariel swam out of the grotto and up to the surface to investigate. A ship was sailing past. Peering over the side of the ship, Ariel saw a young man. His name was Prince Eric. The ship's crew was celebrating his birthday. Ariel stared at the prince. She had never seen anyone like him before. She instantly fell in love. At that moment, a storm hit. Lightning struck the ship, setting it on fire. Eric managed to save his dog Max, but the prince was swept into the sea. Ariel dove after the prince. Grasping Eric under his arms, Ariel hauled him out of the water and headed for the shore. On the beach, Ariel sang to an unconscious Eric. Slowly, his eyes began to open. Just then, Ariel heard a barking sound coming up the beach. It was Max. Afraid of being discovered, she dove into the water. Ariel watched as Eric's manservant, Grimsby, arrived and helped the prince inside. Somehow, she decided she would find a way to be a part of his world. The next day, Ariel swam around in a daze. She was in love. All she could think about was Eric. Even King Triton noticed Ariel's odd behavior. When he learned Ariel was in love, he was elated, until he discovered she was in love with a human. King Triton was enraged. He ordered Sebastian to take him to Ariel. At the entrance to Ariel's grotto, the king watched his lovesick daughter sing to a statue of Eric that had fallen from the prince's ship. King Triton burst into the grotto. He reminded Ariel that contact with the human world was strictly forbidden, but she would not hear it. She loved Eric and wanted to be with him. Furious, King Triton vowed to get through to his daughter one way or another. Raising his trident, he blasted all of Ariel's treasures until only broken fragments remained. Turning his back on Ariel, King Triton swam away. Behind him, Ariel sobbed. At that moment, Ursula's eels, Flotsam and Jetsam, slithered out of the shadows. Ursula had been watching Ariel. This was Ursula's chance. The eels offered to bring Ariel to the Sea Witch. They explained that Ursula could make all of Ariel's dreams come true. Sebastian tried to stop Ariel, but she would not listen. Turning her back on Sebastian, Ariel swam after the eels. Ariel followed Flotsam and Jetsam to Ursula's lair. As Ariel entered, she saw pale, hopeless creatures stuck to the sea floor, Ursula's prisoners. The Sea Witch was waiting for Ariel. True to the eel's words, she offered to make the Little Mermaid's dreams come true. Ursula would make Ariel human in exchange for her voice. Ursula explained that Ariel would be human for 3 days. If Eric kissed her by sunset of the 3rd day, she would remain human. But there was a price. If Eric did not kiss her, Ariel would turn back into a mermaid and become Ursula's prisoner. Taking a deep breath, Ariel signed Ursula's contract. At Ursula's command, Ariel began to sing. Her voice flowed from her body into Ursula's seashell necklace. Suddenly, the sea began to churn around Ariel. Her tail disappeared, and in its place appeared legs. Flounder and Sebastian had been watching from the shadows. Racing in, they grabbed Ariel and rushed her to the surface. Ariel was delighted with her new legs, but Sebastian was worried. Finally, seeing how miserable Ariel would be without Eric, Sebastian agreed to stay and help her. Scuttle was eager to help too. He helped Ariel to the beach and wrapped her in an old sailcloth. Elsewhere on the beach, Eric was talking to Max about the girl who had saved him. He couldn't get her out of his head. She had the most beautiful voice he had ever heard. At that moment, Max began to bark. He took off down the beach, with Eric close behind. The two spotted Ariel at once. Eric studied Ariel. Could she be the girl who had saved him? When he learned she couldn't talk, his hopes fell. Still, Eric could see that Ariel needed help. He brought her into the palace, and his friendly servants took her in hand. Eric's maid, Carlotta, helped Ariel into a luxurious bubble bath and took her sailcloth to be cleaned. Unfortunately, Sebastian was in a pocket of the sailcloth, and the poor crab soon found himself in a far less enjoyable bath. Escaping through a window, he landed in the palace's kitchen. The chef immediately spied the little crab. Thinking Sebastian was a crab he had forgotten to cook, the chef tried to throw him into a pot. Sebastian escaped, enraging the chef. Pulling out a cleaver, the chef chased Sebastian around the kitchen. Finally, Sebastian managed to escape on a plate, headed to the dining room. Meanwhile, a freshly dressed Ariel joined Eric and Grimsby in the Great Hall. Eric's breath caught in his throat. He'd never seen anyone so beautiful. As the trio sat down to dinner, Ariel noticed a dinglehopper on the table. She picked it up and began to comb her hair. Across the table, Ariel saw Grimsby holding a snarf blat. Reaching for it, Ariel blew into it. Ash flew everywhere and covered Grimsby's face. Eric laughed, charmed by the girl. Hearing the princess' delight, Grimsby suggested that Eric give Ariel a tour of the kingdom. The next morning, the two set out together. Eric took Ariel to the market, where she smelled flowers, tasted human food, and saw her first puppet show. In the square, the two danced. It was a perfect day, but Eric showed no sign of wanting to kiss Ariel. As the sun set, Eric took Ariel rowing on a lagoon. Sebastian knew he had to do something. With the help of the other animals in the lagoon, Sebastian began to serenade the two with a love song. Eric gazed at Ariel. He leaned closer. Then, splash! Flotsam and Jetsam had tipped the boat over. Ursula watched from her lair. That had been too close. It was time to take matters into her hands. Laughing nastily, Ursula transformed herself into a beautiful young woman named Vanessa. Around her neck, she wore the seashell that contained Ariel's voice. That evening, as Eric stood on his balcony, he heard a voice. He recognized it as once. It was the girl who had saved him. At that moment, he spied Vanessa on the beach. When Eric saw her, he instantly fell under her spell. The next morning, Scuttle awoke Ariel with amazing news. The prince was getting married. Ariel was overjoyed. Eric wanted to marry her. But when Ariel stepped out of her room, she overheard Eric introducing Grimsby to Vanessa. She was the woman he was marrying. Ariel was devastated. Later, as the wedding ship departed, Ariel sat on the dock and cried. She had lost her chance at being human and at true love. Meanwhile, Scuttle was flying past the wedding ship when he heard singing. Peering through the window, he saw Vanessa looking in the mirror. Looking back at her was Ursula. Scuttle flew off to find Ariel at once. When Ariel learned that Ursula had tricked Eric, she dove into the water. Ariel held tight to a barrel as Flounder and the other sea animals dragged her toward the ship. She had to stop the wedding, and fast. The sun was setting on her third day as a human. On the ship, the wedding was already underway. Eric stood before the minister in a trance. Beside him, Vanessa smirked. She was sure she had defeated Ariel. Before Vanessa could say her vows, Scuttle and an army of sea animals attacked. A flock of bluebirds flew at Vanessa, while Scuttle tugged at the seashells around her neck. With a crash, the seashell fell to the floor. Ariel's voice flowed out of it and back to her, just as she boarded the ship. At last, she could speak. Hearing Ariel's voice, Eric realized that she was the girl he loved. He rushed to embrace her, but it was too late for the Little Mermaid. The sun had set. Ariel's legs turned back into a tail, and she fell to the ground. Confused, Eric looked down at her. Cackling, Vanessa transformed back into Ursula. Grabbing Ariel by the arm, she dragged her into the sea. Eric wasted no time. Jumping into a lifeboat, he went after Ariel. He had already lost her once. He would not lose her again. Below the water, King Triton appeared. He demanded that Ursula let Ariel go. Ursula would not hear of it, but she was willing to make an exchange. King Triton knew he had to save his daughter. Pointing his trident at the contract, he changed the signature to his own, and at once he became Ursula's prisoner. Ursula laughed gleefully as she picked up King Triton's crown and trident. At last, she would be queen of the seas. Suddenly, a large spear grazed Ursula's arm and cut her. It was Eric. Ursula turned the trident on him. Ariel lunged at Ursula and pulled her hair. Ursula's shot went wild and hit Flotsam and Jetsam, who disintegrated. Enraged, Ursula used the power of the trident to transform into an enormous sea monster. Swirling the trident, she created a giant whirlpool, with Ariel and Eric in the center. Out of the water rose a sunken ship. Climbing aboard, Eric aimed the broken prow at Ursula and pierced her heart. With a scream, Ursula died. Her body sank into the sea. With the last of his energy, Eric swam to shore and collapsed on the sand. Beneath the water, King Triton, and the poor souls Ursula had trapped were freed from her spell. As the sun rose, Ariel sat on a rock and watched Eric. Behind her, King Triton watched his daughter. He could see how much she loved the human prince. With a sigh, he touched his trident to the water. As his magic reached Ariel, her tail transformed into legs. She was human again, for good. Delighted, Ariel raced to land and was reunited with Eric. A short time later, Ariel's friends and family cheered as Ariel and Eric were married. At last, Ariel had become part of the world she loved, and she knew she would live happily ever after. The end. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that, make sure to like and subscribe.